the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Folks, how are you?
Please welcome the 45th President of the United States, Donald Trump. Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern.
I just finished watching the debate, President Biden and President Trump. To be honest with you, I'm a little surprised, both in a good way and in a way that I expected. In the first question, the moderator asked about the economy. Here's a little bit of what both candidates had to say.
We got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach into your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do is try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done. There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem.
We had the greatest economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID. And when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID.
Here's the fact about that question. Everybody is feeling the pinch in the economy. Now, some people say because the stock market is at record highs, that the economy is strong. But when you talk about people's wallets and inflation, nobody can talk anybody out of believing that your money just doesn't go as far as it used to. A little later in the debate, the moderator asked about tax cuts that President Trump implemented when he was in office and how they're supposed to end in 2025. Here's what both candidates had to say about that.
Tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation.
National debt.
He had the largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America. Billionaires in America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24%, 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 billion, I should say, in a 10-year period. We'd be able to wipe out his debt. We'd be able to help make sure that all those things we need to do, child care, elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen our health care system, making sure that we're able to make every single solitary person eligible for what I've been able to do with the COVID, with dealing with everything we have to do with, look, if we finally beat Medicare.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump?
Well, he's right. He did beat Medicare. He beat it to death, and he's destroying Medicare.
Earlier in the video, I said that I saw some things that I expected. And what we saw in Joe Biden's response is exactly what a lot of people were saying didn't need to happen in order for him to look like he was in a mental state to continue to be the president. he froze up. And you'll see that he mumbles throughout the debate, just like he does in other situations. Again, there's been some talks that Democrats are looking at this debate very seriously to see if they want to give Joe Biden the Democratic nomination, or if they want to bring in another candidate to go against President Trump. The moderator asked a question that I believe is more of a 50-50 issue in the country. A question that, if answered incorrectly, could lose President Trump some of women's votes. They asked about Roe v. Wade.
Block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion bill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives. Everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did is I put 3 great Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought.
Terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe when it was decided. Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they were all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are, whether you need help. The idea that states are able to do this is a little like saying we're going to turn civil rights back to the states. Let each state have a different rule. Look, there's so many young women who have been, including a young woman who just was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in, they talk about that. But here's the deal.
I have my own thoughts about abortion. I know I've never had a child of mine aborted, so from that perspective, I could never see it as an option. Obviously, it's a lot of people out here who don't feel that way. This is going to be our last issue we talk about today. But I believe all of the issues we talked about in this video are very important issues. This is what both candidates had to say about the immigration issue in the United States right now.
Why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation where you had no circumstance where they could come across the border with the number of border police there are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure the families were separated. That's not the right way to go. What I've done since I've changed the law, what's happened? I've changed it in a way that now you're in a situation where there are 40% fewer people coming across the border illegally. That's better than when he left office.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now, all terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the Middle East, everywhere. All over the world, they're pouring in. And this guy just left it open. And he didn't need legislation because I didn't have legislation. I said, close the border. We had the safest border in history. In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president, but I won't say that, but they endorsed me for president. Brandon, just speak to him. But look, we had the safest border in history. Now we have the worst border in history. There's never been anything like it.
When it comes to politics, I have my own beliefs. I don't really believe in pushing my beliefs on other people. I do search for the truth. That's all I search for is the truth. And I use my own moral compass to make a decision as to who I'm going to support after I get myself as close to the truth as I possibly can. I do want to know what you think, so definitely feel free to write it in the comments. I will say that I don't believe that President Trump lost his temper like he usually does. He definitely was more professional. He stayed focused. He did wander off of the subjects, and sometimes he had to be reminded about the question. And that's a fact. You can play the video back and see that. Also, President Biden, it was quite a few situations where you didn't know exactly what he was talking about. Either you couldn't understand him, or he just lost track of exactly what he was saying. I'm not sure how that's going to fare with the Democratic Party and with people across the country who saw this debate. I do know for me, it doesn't seem to me like if the Democrats want to win the White House, they can do it with Joe Biden. I personally believe that he served the country for decades and he deserves the opportunity to be a grandfather and hold his grandchildren and go fishing. He deserves that. Again, what do you think about it? Let me meet you in the comments. Let's talk about it. Like, share, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next video.